What is up, everybody? It is Whitewall Wednesday. That means we're going to get into some marketing tips today, and we're going to help you get the most out of all of your marketing campaigns. Stay tuned. What up, Jose? Good to see you on here. Enzo, what's up, guys? So like I said, every Wednesday we go live with our marketing tips, 4 p.m. Eastern. So stay tuned. This will be about 15 minutes or so. Today we're going to be talking about web design. Last week we discussed different platforms. So we talked about Shopify versus Wix versus WordPress, and didn't get into Magento. That's a really big one. Some people mentioned that after, but have worked with Magento. That's a really big e-commerce platform. So today we're going to be talking more about the design aspect of things. So we're going to get our creative director in here as well. So, alright guys, hang for a minute. We'll get ourselves set up. And some of you know our creative director, Naeem. He is the design aspects of, what is the structure of the website? What is the purpose of everything?
Hey,
there, sir.
how are you?
Good to see you. All right, looking sharp. Everybody, if you have not had the pleasure of meeting Naeem, this is Mr. Naeem himself, and he is gracing us with his presence. This is not a typical adventure, but for our web design discussions, this is definitely a natural aspect. Thanks for jumping on here with us, dude. We've got a lot of client projects in motion for all the clients. Don't worry, we'll get right back to it. This will last for about 10 or 15 minutes, maybe go half an hour today. We're going to get into some fun, but then we'll get right back to work, I promise. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. See a lot of people getting in here.
Right.
Like I said, if you guys missed last week's discussion, we talked about platforms, the pros and cons of like Shopify versus WordPress, owning your territory versus, some of it's really easy to use, but you're going to pay long-term those subscription costs. Go check out that video. It's posted on our channels. Today we're going to get into design. So Naeem, let me just jump out of the gate here. Is web design just about making the site look pretty, just making it look nice?
If only it was.
How do you approach it?
So really, web design in general is about solving problems visually. Any profession is about solving problems, but designers, we take a visual aspect to figuring out how to solve a client's problem. So with web design, one of the main problems that we solve is, what does my company look like in the digital space? So when you go to a company's website, that's who they are, that's what they represent, that is like their identity. It's almost the same thing, if not even more, than walking into like a brick and mortar. So web design is about solving the client's problems, which usually means how to get more customers to their products and how to get more customers to their service.
Gotcha. So I guess coming into that, how do you start considering, I guess, the functionality versus the flashiness? Like, what kind of research goes in before you start actually getting into design work?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. First, you have to know who you're dealing with. So with a lot of companies, they have things called user personas, where basically you're kind of creating this make-believe person who epitomizes your target demographic or one of your many target demographics.
For people to be aware, those persona profiles sometimes have a name, and we'll put a face in them, and they can get very precise. So yeah, it might be called Will, and 35, and he's got a family, and these personas get pretty involved. So there's a lot of research that goes on. So you're doing a lot of research just before you even put the strategy, before you even get into the blueprint.
Absolutely. And the idea behind creating these personas is that you want to treat them as if they're a real person, because realistically, they're emblematic of all of the real people that you want or are already patronizing your business. So you have to research your user personas, and obviously to make a user persona, you have to understand who target demographic is. You also need to, specifically when it comes to your website, you kind of need to figure out how does your consumer want to get from A to B. So from the moment that they log into your homepage to the moment that they purchase a product or a service from you, what does that path look like? That's called the user journey.
And that's something we've worked on a ton. And guys, we're still talking about before the homepage has even been designed here. We're still talking about everything that you're getting ready
Exactly.
just to get ready for this. So before you do the blueprint, I guess what we've kind of described is the sitemap, and I know we're not going to show that visually here, but just describe. So before we even map things out aesthetically, before it goes to developers,
Mhm.
there's like a pre-stage of a sitemap. So
Okay.
just real quick, yeah, walk us through the function of that sitemap.
Yeah, sure. So a sitemap, for those of you who don't know, that's basically, as Nick alluded to, it's a blueprint for your website. So you have everything. It's kind of just like a little diagram, nothing fancy, something that you could like draw with like pen and paper. It has your homepage, the elements on your homepage, and how each page connects to one another. It can be really, really low res, like a circle with some words in it, like something that you would do on a whiteboard. Or you could get a little bit fancier with talking about the different parts of each page and how they connect to one another.
Some people out there have actually built things with their hands, and you've heard the phrase sort of measure twice and cut once.
Exactly.
The full phrase is think through it 3 times, measure twice, cut once.
Exactly.
So that's sort of this element is really thinking through. And it sounds so simple, but realistically, as you're doing those site diagrams, there's a contact form that leads to a pop-up message that's going to need to lead to a thank you message that then has something happen. And there's actually a lot of little pieces. So each element in and of itself can be very simple. But when you start mapping these out, I would say it's not actually super simple, because once you collect all the elements, you're weaving it together, and it can have a bit of complexity to it. And that's where it's great to think through this ahead of time. Does that connect to a CRM?
And unfortunately, a lot of clients aren't really thinking about that. They're thinking, okay, I just need a web page, I need a contact page, I need some product pages. No, you have to kind of plan for everything, because if you don't plan for everything, there's going to be that one thing that you don't plan for that ends up biting you.
There's always that one detail if you don't think it through. And then further beyond that, guys, if you have a CRM or something, we often use HubSpot, SharpSpring, Infusionsoft, a lot of these programs. They have elements, programs that they've already got. So contact forms that might drop into your WordPress or something. So for your designer to actually know what those templates are going to be, and the variability of those and how much they can be molded before you drop them in, you want to think through all that before you design it. And so the thinking stage is going to save you so much time and energy at the end. I don't know how many people want us to cut this part off, because it might cost a few $100 and get in there and start just looking at stuff, and it's kind of scary. I'd rather just get to it. But realistically, like, thinking through it 3 times will save you a ton at the end.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so once you have the site maps, you've done your research. Let's get into the actual design here. So you've got your user persona profiles. Obviously, you've got your brand guideline document, which describes your fonts and colors and all that. You've got your site map. So now you've got your collection of assets. So now do you start on design? Do you get into the homepage, or where does it go once you feel like you've got the research collected?
Well, you definitely want to, before you start making things pretty, as we like to say, you still want to make sure that your wireframe is signed off. So the wireframe, for those of you who don't know, is just the kind of the skeleton. How we said the sitemap was a skeleton of the entire website. Wireframes are more like a skeleton of each page. So you get the basic idea of where all of the elements are, and in that way, your website makes sense. So even before we start putting animation, start putting code in, start going into any Adobe Creative Suite program, you look at the structure of your website from like an information standpoint, and you ask yourself and you ask your client, does this make sense for the user I'm trying to attract? And if it does not, obviously there's going to be follow-up questions after that, depending on your role or your field. But if the answers to those questions are no or in the negative, got to revisit it. So that is a very, very, very important step, probably one of the most important steps when it comes to the actual design part beyond the research part we discussed earlier.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I guess one thing I've always sort of sat on the line with between budgeting for clients and really having the full creative scope. Sometimes we walk the line where, for those of you who are familiar with the idea of templates, you can have one template that works for several pages, right? It's going to have the banner at the top and the headline, so maybe the same template works for multiple pages. A lot of times I'm trying to sort of save client budget and make sure that we get the most bang for our buck. So I like to think if we create a design template page for one, that you can kind of hand that off to developers and they can typically extrapolate from there.
Right.
What the other pages should be. They should be templates almost exactly the same. But then again, love to get your thoughts on that. So do you think it's better to have a page designed for every single thing? Or is it okay just to create like a single template? And so you have your homepage template, your contact page template, and maybe a template C, which would work for several pages, and just create those three and you're done.
I think it's a little bit of both. You definitely need to, for those evergreen pages, you need to have those as their own. But, if you are, say, a business that offers a service, like a webinar of some sort, or, speaking engagements, and you do those pretty frequently throughout the year, you're going to want to template those. As a business owner, it's going to run through your pockets pretty quickly if you try to reinvent the wheel every time you have one of these reoccurring events. So from that perspective, yes, you definitely want to look into templating where it makes sense. And when you have a design team that has templated formats for you, it's just a matter of plug and pop. And that saves not only the creative team time, it also saves you time. And when you save time, you often save money. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What pages, do you have a specific order that you go through? I mean, I always imagine you would start with the home page and then kind of work out from there.
Yeah.
Is there a order that you think through?
I always start with the home page, but first and foremost, we actually didn't speak about this. More importantly than whether or not I start with the home page, it's the screen size that I start with. One of the things that is changing in today's society is that we're becoming a lot more mobile friendly. Quite honestly, I think more people search the internet and like just get on the web through their mobile devices than they do on their laptops.
I think 70% mobile at this point. Yeah.
Exactly. So especially when you're designing for websites, not only do you want to consider mobile devices such as iPhones, Androids, et cetera, you also want to consider tablets. You also want to consider the various screen sizes. I say all of that to say that responsive design is the way to go. And you always want to make sure that, one, either if you're a designer, that you're on top of that, but more importantly, if you're a client, that your website encompasses that. And that also goes back into the research that we were talking about earlier. If your clientele is overwhelmingly on mobile and you do not design for mobile, you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing for people to know as well. For the design phase, I mean, you call it responsive design, so it sounds like a design that just fixes itself. But really, in the back end, you're kind of building two different whole versions of a homepage and two different versions of something, contact page, an inner page, and category page, and there are enough adjustments from page to page between mobile and desktop where you're really creating multiple formats in that design element. And yeah, I don't want to kind of put this out there, but to what extent do you think developers can do design, and to what extent do you think design and development need to be separated? Because I've met some talented individuals that can do both, but they seem like two sides of the brain almost. One is programmatic, almost engineering. Another's artistic, and there are individuals that can pull those together. But
Well, I see one of my design / front end coder friends in here, and I'm sure they can attest that if you were to ever see just battles between designers and developers, it can get ugly. It can get pretty ugly because, on one end, designers want to design without any kind of thought process to, how it's going to, not necessarily, they want to design without functionality, but you want to kind of go where your imagination takes you. And developers on the flip side are a little bit more pragmatic about that. So, you can't really design what they can't code, but at the same time, there's a symbiosis there, because you do want to push the limits of what can be designed, what can be created, and what can be coded. So there is a lot. There is a little bit of a push pull, but that comes with, having you mitigate that by having a good design team and a good developer team, and both of those teams working together pretty seamlessly.
And I know most of these tips are really designed for, business owners and professionals that are trying to get the most out of their campaigns. But to the degree that you're talking to some fellow designers, we've worked with a lot of designers, and it takes a whole other element to sort of learn your way through web design. Not to go crazy into the rabbit hole, but maybe we could take 5 minutes here. Just how can a designer go from their junior elements into that web design? Because like I said, there are contact forms you can pull from HubSpot, or there are plugins that you're going to pull in from other WordPress elements, and kind of knowing what those formats are, and knowing how a website is going to be laid out. There are a handful of things that can kind of get a little tricky. They're detailed. So how do you get into that as a designer, just to sort of practice? Is it just practice?
Yeah. One of the biggest takeaways that I have from college, in terms of what I've learned from my professors, time on app. That is the biggest determination as to whether or not you are going to succeed or fail in learning something new. You have to spend time on that app. You have to spend time using that product, using that service, whether it's wireframing, prototyping, or like learning one of the software such as Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe XD, Sketch. I can list them for ages. But the more time you spend utilizing that skill set and thus learning about that skill set, the better you're going to get. There was a point in time where Adobe XD scared me. Hell, there was a point in time where Photoshop was intimidating to me, and even Illustrator. But with time on app, you just knock it out. Not only do you learn more about the product itself, you learn more about your own design skill sets, what intrigues you, what design sensibilities you have. So you kind of, and this is of course assuming that you have the design foundation, like understanding the basic elements of design. You can't skip that part at all, because otherwise all you are is a guy with Photoshop or After Effects or whatever.
Yeah, After Effects. These things all intimidate me, and that's why I'm grateful every day to have Naeem on the team, and Enzo, our art director. I think he's on here as well. So these guys save me, because I am not a designer, and I know when to hand that off. But design is a huge element. I guess, how do you come back to a site? I tend to say a website is never done, right? Like
Never.
some people want it to be 100%. It's never 100%. It's a living creature. There's software that needs to be updated. There's things that need to happen. And conversely, there's optimization. So how do you look at this at an ongoing site? And what are you checking after the site has gone up in terms of designs, aesthetics?
Well, the smartest thing to do is A/B test. You always got to be tinkering. They say artists, are never really done with their work. They're always tweaking and tinkering. They just have to like kind of put it down, or else they'll end up like fucking it up. Excuse my language. But
Welcome to Whitewall, y'all.
huh?
Welcome to Whitewall, y'all.
But realistically, with design, especially when you're designing websites, tinkering with it after effect is actually encouraged. You want to continue to see what's working and see what isn't working. And it goes back to that research aspect. Because if you have the design and if you have the product and you've put it out there already, and you're seeing what works and what doesn't with the consumer base, now you can kind of continue to optimize the site. You can bring in more traffic. So it's a growing process. You're never really done with a website unless you're like done with that company, so to speak. But you continually learn. You may not be on it. You might be clocking, maybe 20 hours a week on a project 1 week, and then a couple weeks later it's just maintenance. So it's maybe like 5 tops. But, you know, there's still a little bit of maintenance that goes on in there. And there's a lot to learn. You know, a lot of people look at redesigning their websites as a daunting task, which it can be in some aspects, but you really learn a lot in this increasingly digital world, not only about your business, but about yourself and what about your strong points. And or as my fiance likes to say, you learn about your glows, and your grows. You know, areas where you can grow and where areas where you succeed.
I like it. Yeah, and the A/B testing is definitely super important for us. We're always looking at data. So Whitewall is always kind of a numbers first. I guess we approach things as almost like business managers. We see the numbers we need to reach, and then the marketing elements that need to kind of wrap around to structure us there. And yeah, setting a web page allows us to get conversions, but A/B testing allows us to optimize and really crank the most out of every investment dollar that goes into the marketing plan. So
Absolutely.
that's cool. And one thing I've noticed
Hold
is,
on, really quick. I wanted to touch on what you're saying about the numbers. And, you know, a
yeah,
lot of people, while, you know, we're definitely about the numbers, but the beautiful side about often designing a website is you put the numbers with the narrative. So people often aren't really just buying a product, they're buying a story. You know, if they buy into the story of your business, if they buy into the story of your brand,
mhm.
they're going to help with those numbers. So those two go hand in hand. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, and that's true. I mean, I know you've said it before, but we don't buy products; we buy stories. And humans are natural storytellers. People typically speak in life. 70% of what people say is about them. We want to tell our story. We want to hear other people's stories, and web is really that. And then on the back end, you A/B test to see which storyline is really connecting the best. And in some ways, we're, I guess, professional matchmakers like that, just trying to see how we can connect the service to the audience as best we can. Um, and one thing, yeah, that I've seen from advertising, by the way, so just a quick tip in terms of design, is if you have an ad on Facebook or something else, the imagery that you're using there, if you can match that up to the landing page of, where you're sending someone on the website, that helps them feel like they're still in the same kind of garden, that they're still on the same path, even though they've gone from one platform all the way to your website. Using some of that same imagery and headlines and stuff will absolutely increase your conversion rate because people don't feel like they've just fallen off of something.
Absolutely.
So the A/B testing sounds easy. It can be a little complex, but just take it easy. Just test, literally A/B, 1 and 2, at a time. Keep it simple to start. But A/B testing is the most strategic way. And like Naeem said, even after a website is live, A/B test your landing pages, A/B test different contact forms, A/B test all your different elements aesthetically. One time we actually did a conversion where we changed purchase buttons to green, and it actually cranked out an extra 2%. So little tweaks here and there. If you can find 5% here, 2% there, 3% there, cobble it all together, it starts to make a big difference month over month. So these are all the things we're looking at in terms of design. If anybody has questions, by the way, we've got another 5 or 6 minutes on here, but feel free to push some things in here. One thing, I guess, connecting to what we talked about last week, which is the different platforms. One thing to consider is custom platforms are going to let you do whatever you want with design. HTML5 and some of the coding out there right now is so insanely flexible that you can do whatever you want practically. Anything Naeem can design, a developer should be able to put together. And if you guys want to challenge me on that, feel free. I'll take the questions. But coding is so flexible these days. That being said, there are platforms like Shopify,
Absolutely.
like some of those subscription-based platforms where you're not going to have the ability to customize the way that you want to. It's their platform. You can change the colors, the logo, the whatever, but you're not going to have that full capability. Now, if you're doing it yourself and you're a solopreneur and you're getting it all done, you might want a simple platform like that. That might be better for you so that you actually sleep each night and you can remember to do things that a lot of entrepreneurs forget for the first few years. So you don't need to get ahead of yourself, but just realize there's a lot of benefit. Even WordPress, which you can argue is kind of a templated platform, because you own it, because you buy that code. And again, you can buy some of those designs for $50, themeforest.net, stuff like that. But because you own that code, the developers can customize it and make it look however, Naeem or whoever your creative director is, whatever that creative is, the developer can put that together. So choose your platform accordingly and just realize your designer doesn't have all the magic tools in the world. If you use a drag and drop platform, there will be some walls that are going to be hit there in terms of what we can do to customize. How do you choose which platform is best for a client?
Well, I'll take that one. How do you choose which platform is best for a client? It depends on the client. If they're more of an e-commerce type uh, business where they have several different products, maybe they may be more interested in Shopify. If they are looking for a little bit more customization without, having to go into the hard level coding, maybe Squarespace is their thing. I personally do not advise anyone use Wix, but if you're really just starting out and you're trying to kind of get your feet wet and get started as a solopreneur, hey, maybe Wix might work for you. It is a lot of these websites and like a lot of these companies, services rather, are really easy to learn. They're very user friendly and they don't require a lot of code, if any. As you go along and as you grow your business, you might need some more custom code, and it is able to accommodate that. If you do have a designer and or a developer on hand. So yeah, it honestly depends on the need of the client. There's plenty of services out there that can match whatever needs you have.
Yeah, and I'm always thinking money, 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 money. So for me, it really comes down to budget. And for example, if you wanted to judge Shopify versus like WordPress with WooCommerce, which one are you going to choose? Well, I mean, a custom WordPress with WooCommerce might be several $1,000s up front. You might pay $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 depending on who you're talking to. It'll be less if you talk to us. I promise you that. But some of those elements are more expensive on the front. But over the long term, you've paid for it. You're really going to have very minimal cost. As opposed to Shopify, you're going to get to that $50. Oh, well, now I'm starting to do well, so I'm going to jump up to 100, 125. You start getting those add-ons, and that subscription cost, while upfront it's minimal, it adds up really quickly. So if you have the budget upfront to get into a good platform, then we would always want to do that. But if you're just bootstrapping and you got to get going, and we need to make money on the fly and figure it out as we go, then we choose a simple platform where we can just get things running. Shopify is one of my favorite just get it up and going platforms. But if you can afford it in the long term, you want to own your platform, it'll be a lot less expensive and it's fully customizable. Some owners honestly just don't want to deal with it. Technology can be still a bit spooky for some people. So sometimes you just want that simple platform if that's needed. But generally, we like to go and say just own your stuff, make it yours, avoid those subscription costs. But that's kind of how I would balance it. So those are two perspectives.
No, yeah.
For the subscription-based platform, are there workarounds to customize it? There are often in these platforms areas where you can drop in code. So you can often kind of customize things in that sense. If you wanted to include an iframe and get something injected basically if you want to include code in your platform, that's certainly doable. Like I said, a lot of times HubSpot will have a form. I keep saying HubSpot just because I have spent way too much time in that little cave. But yeah, HubSpot has a form where we can grab the code, drop it into WordPress, inject it right in there. Shopify and others have those things too. Shopify is great also in the sense of those plugins. So if you do have to kind of bite the bullet and go with Shopify, there are plugins for everything. It's actually fairly impressive. So Shopify, while it is somewhat of a rigid structure that you're renting from someone, I got to say, they've done a pretty good job of building it out and giving you some good stats. So, it's a decent platform to start with.
Yeah.
So you don't like Wix? Is that the
No,
takeaway?
No. I hate Wix. I think
Yeah.
it's like it was just like you were saying earlier. Depending on where you are with your business and how you're trying to grow your business, that Wix may be what you need at that particular moment. If you don't need anything like super duper fancy, you're just trying to get a storefront up, a digital storefront up, and have somewhere to live online. Hey, be my guest. But I would assume
Don't
that
wait for the marketing to be perfect, man. Just get it going, start making money. Don't wait for perfection. Be too late, I promise. Just get
Someone
things going,
said
start making some money, and work on it as it goes.
Wix is
Well, I
helping
guess
you.
that's our half hour. So we got to wrap up here and get back to work, or our clients will start calling because
Yeah,
they
I'm
might
pretty sure
actually
one
catch
of
us
them.
out here. But just to kind of take away from this, to build a website and do the whole thing and actually get it up and running, sometimes we say having a website without any promotion is like having a business card sitting in your desk drawer. It's not doing anything. It's not doing you any good. So we're going to get into some future Whitewall Wednesday chats about how to promote and get that traffic and build visibility. One of our specialties is making social media channels profitable. So getting that all pumping to your website and making the most of it, we'll get into that next. But if you have any more questions, just send us a DM. We'll get into the answers with you directly. And if we can help you out, just let us know. Hope you will join us next Wednesday at 4. Any big takeaways, Naeem?
Um, Learn about your customers. Like learn about your customers. That's really it. That's gonna help you along the way.
If you guys didn't catch the beginning of this, circle back. There's a lot of research that happens before pen ever touches paper, even in the digital world. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Naeem, for being an all-star
And so,
in general and for jumping on here today. So we'll catch you guys next Wednesday at 4 p.m. on Instagram Live. I don't know what the topic is, but I'm sure we'll be posting it on our social media channels soon. So keep yourselves posted. Catch you next week. Big shout out. Later, guys.
take care, y'all.